Analyzing the free agent fit of starting pitcher Kevin Gausman with the Twins on today's episode of Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Minnesota Twins podcast. Today is Tuesday, November 9th, and I'm your gracious host, Nash Walker. Today's episode is brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow me on Twitter at NashWalker9. You can follow the show at Locked On Twins. Thank you for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. This is Nash Walker, writer at Twins Daily, lifelong Twins fan, bringing you 5 days a week coverage on the Minnesota Twins. And we are getting into it. Free agent profiles. We know the Twins' biggest need by far this offseason is starting pitching. It's what they need. Yesterday, we broke down Marcus Stroman, and we talked about Jace Tingler as well. There's a lot going on right now with the Twins, and I think there will continue to be a lot going on with the Twins in the upcoming weeks and months this offseason. So you want to stick with me. We're going to break all these names down. I had a promise last offseason that has come into this offseason as well. There will not be a free agent or a trade that the Twins make of a player you haven't heard of on this podcast already. So we're going to break down all these options, all the trade candidates, all the free agents, and you're going to be ready and you're going to be more informed and you're going to have an opinion at the end and think, okay, here's the way I want them to go after I break down these free agents. Marcus Stroman yesterday, super fun. I mean, he's just a really fun guy to break down. The person, the player, the style, the movement on his pitches, the way that he gets outs, it's all unique and it's all special for Marcus Stroman, and I loved breaking him down yesterday. Came to a conclusion myself that he makes a ton of sense for the Twins. Might do that again today with Kevin Gausman, who I think is in the Stroman tier. So if you think about tiers of free agents, I think in the starting pitching market, Max Scherzer's probably in his own tier at the top as a surefire ace. And even then, at the end of the season, showed some signs of decline. You know, maybe his arm's not fully there, and it's expected. I think he's 37. He's going to be 38. So maybe he's not the same guy, but he's in the first tier for me. Then there's this second tier of Stroman, Gausman, Ray, probably in that tier. If you want to put, Justin Verlander, if you think he's going to be healthy, or Noah Syndergaard in that tier, they're probably in their own tier for me. The Verlander, Syndergaard, Carlos Rodon tier, aces when they're healthy, but you just don't know if they're healthy. Clayton Kershaw also in that bucket of players with health questions. Now, Verlander through a bullpen, I guess, looks really good. The thing is with Scherzer, with Verlander, with Syndergaard, and with Kershaw, I just think it's a long shot that the Twins will sign any of those guys. You see the storied histories, and for Scherzer, the Dodgers need rotation help, and it makes a ton of sense for him to just go back to LA. And in his case, he's going to go to a team he knows is going to compete. That's the thing that I've talked about with these free agents. I'll continue to talk about. It's going to be difficult for the Twins. It's already difficult for the Twins to sign free agent starting pitchers. But what makes it doubly difficult, that wasn't the case last year, wasn't the case in the 2019 offseason, is that these guys don't know if the Twins are going to compete. So when you look at these veterans, you look at Verlander and Kershaw and Scherzer and Syndergaard, why would they want, I guess more the older guys more than Syndergaard, but why would they want to go somewhere they don't know if they're going to compete for sure? So that's what I've thought out with these guys. I don't think it's a 0% chance, but I just wonder and think that they will go somewhere where they're certain, whether that's the Dodgers, the Braves, who just won the World Series. The Yankees are always going to compete. They're always going to be in the mix because with a payroll that high, it's hard not to be in the mix every single year, even in the AL East. The Red Sox, the big markets we talk about too. So we talk about that top tier. I think it's a little far-fetched to believe the Twins can be in the race for any of those guys. And that's why we go to this next best tier. And what makes this class different than 2019 that had Steven Strasburg and Garrett Cole on another level. Garrett Cole at that time was the best pitcher in the world, him and Jacob deGrom. And so for Cole to sign the deal that he did and for Cole to be available that offseason, it's a completely different look than this year. It's a completely different look. Last year, you saw some of the best starting pitchers on the trade market get moved. Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove to the Padres, Blake Snell to the Padres. You saw them make those big moves on the trade market. I think this year presents an opportunity at that tier of where Zach Wheeler was in 2019. So in 2019, you had Cole Strasburg, and then you had that Wheeler, Bumgarner, Ryu tier, if you remember. And the Twins were said to be in on Ryu, Bumgarner, and Wheeler. So, and especially Wheeler, I think less so on Ryu and Bumgarner, but especially on Wheeler. And the Phillies look brilliant for signing Zach Wheeler. He's been amazing and is in the Cy Young race this year in the National League, and is a guy that I would want on the Twins in a nanosecond, even with his remaining contract. So I think that tier from 2019, that level of tier is was weaker then than it is now, because you have Robbie Ray, Marcus Stroman, and you have Kevin Gausman in that tier this year. And I think it's a lot stronger in that second wave. And I'm really excited about the prospects of getting one of those guys in the second wave. I think the Twins have a chance to get one of those guys in the second wave. And we're going to break right into it. We talked about Stroman yesterday. We're talking about Gausman today. And Gausman, 31 years old, going into his 31-year-old season, so basically the same age as Marcus Stroman. I think they're actually the same age. He's from Centennial, Colorado. One of the breakouts of the 2021 season. He was great in 2020, but a breakout in 2021 for the Giants. I want to talk about Gausman today, come to a conclusion on him, talk about the viability of the Twins signing him. All of that is coming up. First, after this word from BetOnline. BetOnline is back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of the basketball season. More props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to their new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. Kevin Gausman gets into the second tier here. It's a really interesting class. It really is. And it's deep. It's definitely deep, because I think there's guys who we consider to be in the third tier who I think in any other year would be in the second tier. Guys like Steven Matz, Eduardo Rodriguez, that kind of level, where they're not on the Gausman, Stroman, Ray level to me, but they're in that third tier. I think that's a special group. And then you have the wild cards of Rodon, Syndergaard, Verlander, who could provide immense value on a one-year deal in 2022. So very interesting class, really intriguing, and especially intriguing in this little three-man group that I look at with Gausman, Ray, and Stroman. Gausman mentioned 31 years old. So in 2012, the Astros took Carlos Correa with the first pick out of the Puerto Rican Baseball Academy. The Minnesota Twins picked second, took Byron Buxton. The Seattle Mariners picked third and took Mike Zunino, who now plays for the Tampa Bay Rays. They just picked up his option. Low average, high power, great defender for the Rays. And then the Orioles picked fourth, and they got Kevin Gausman out of LSU. And some rumblings that the Twins were interested in Gausman in this draft, and the Orioles ended up getting him fourth. 6 years with Baltimore. So the thing with Gausman, and I really want to stress here as we talk about him, and the difference between Gausman and Stroman, because what we're trying to do is differentiate in this tier. Differentiate between Gausman, Stroman, and Ray. And when you look at Gausman and the 6 years in Baltimore, it's hard to exactly say whether this is who he is or not, because 763 2/3 is a massive sample. That is a huge sample, and his ERA was exactly league average. So on a good team, that Kevin Gausman in Baltimore is like a 3 or a 4. He's like a fourth starter on a really good team, about league average, J-Happ level, say. J-Happ was actually better in that span than Kevin Gausman was, because Happ ended up being 13 or 15% better than league average in terms of ERA. Gausman right at league average, a 4.22 ERA. Strikeout rate 21% in Baltimore. Walk rate 7%. 10 wins above replacement in that time. So, like I said, a 3 or a 4, a really good number 4, a low end number 3 in that time for Kevin Gausman. Here's the thing with Baltimore, with Colorado, sometimes with Pittsburgh, in the Garrett Cole case, Joe Musgrove as well. You trade guys, you get them out of that environment, and you can see them thrive. And part of that is maybe those organizations being a little bit behind other orgs in terms of technology and finding ways to make guys better, finding things to tweak in pitchers. But as soon as Gausman got out of Atlanta, he made got out of Baltimore, to Atlanta, made 10 starts, had a 2.87 ERA in 2018. Then he was awful in 2019, but his fielding independent pitching was almost 2 runs lower than his ERA. So a lot of bad luck in over 100 innings in 2019, only 102 and a third. Was in the bullpen at the end of that year as well. Then he signs a 1-year, $3 million contract with San Francisco, $3.3 million, and was tremendous in the shortened season. 59 and 2/3. ERA was 18% better than league average. It was his best season, 32% strikeout rate. So his strikeout rate jumped massively from 21% in those 6 years with Baltimore to 32% in 2020. And then the Giants, one of their best moves, and the Giants ended up winning 107 games and had an amazing season. Like, no words for the season that the Giants had. I was mesmerized watching Ben Kaspick, Locked On Giants, watching his post-game videos. What a special team that was. Huge part of it, Kevin Gausman, and the fact that they offered him an $18.9 million qualifying offer for 2021. So they signed him to a $3 million deal, just over $3 million for 2020. And then he's good, not great. I use the word tremendous. I would like to dial that back. He was good, not great in 2020 as probably a solid number 2. Then they offer him the qualifying offer for almost $19 million. So they really bet on him in a huge way. And of course, he takes it. And I did like him as a Twins target for sure last year. Made a lot of sense. We talked about him on the show, I'm sure. But he took the qualifying offer. 2021, ties Marcus Stroman, and I think there are a few others maybe, with 33 starts, the most in the league, 192 innings, has a 2.81 ERA in 2021. That is 45% better than league average. Strikeout rate stayed around 30%. Walk rate 6.5%, the same as it was in 2020. Gausman, here's where it's buyer beware for me. Was amazing overall. Like, you look at the overall line, ace, like 2.81 ERA, strikeout rate around 30%, threw 192 innings after a shortened season in 2020, but broke down in the second half. First half had a 1.73 ERA, and opponent's OPS of 476. In the second half, had a 4.42 ERA, 781 opponent's OPS, so 305 points more in OPS. His ERA was almost 3 runs higher, and then he makes a postseason start, throws 6 innings, gives up 4 runs to the Dodgers, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts. So really not a good second half for Gausman, but his second half was a lot like what he'd been in Baltimore for 6 years and over 750 innings. So more so for Gausman than Stroman, you wonder who you're getting. You look at his track record, it's a lot scarier to me. Gausman's track record doesn't, outside of 2020 and 2021, scream that he's going to be a surefire ace in 2022. And why this is scary for me, and we'll look at his repertoire here after we talk about the contract. MLB Trade Rumors has Gausman making $23 million a year for 6 years. And I mentioned he's going into his age 31 season. Jim Bowden has him at $118 million for 5 years, so about $24 million a year. Fangraphs has him for about $22 million a year for 4 years. Twins Daily, we had him 5 years, $25 million a year. So he's going to cost a pretty penny. And he's going to cost more than Marcus Stroman, likely. I think Kevin Gausman will cost more than Marcus Stroman for reasons I like and reasons I don't like. Reasons I like, he's been an ace before. He's been absolutely terrific. You look at the first half of 2021, he was amazing. But you look at his ERA on the season of 2.81. His expected ERA was 3.49. So here's what I'm predicting for Kevin Gausman. I don't think there's any chance he puts up a 2.80 ERA next year. I think that's far-fetched. I think pitching at Oracle helped. The first half, he was amazing, broke down in the second half. I don't think that's happening. I think he's a 3.30 to 3.50 ERA guy, a really solid number 2, much like Marcus Stroman. But here's the difference for me. Something I like is that he's been the ace before, so I think he has a higher upside than Marcus Stroman. But the track record, I'm saying I'm not as sold on as maybe you are or others are or teams are. Looking at 2021, there's more below the surface than what meets the eye there. He's got a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, good spin. His splitter's an elite pitch. So what's been the change for Gausman? There's been actual changes. He's been discovered. Things have been discovered within him, which is a good thing. Throwing fastballs up, splitters down and away, splitters down to righties, more splitters to righties. Really helped him a ton in those matchups. He's got long-term reverse splits, which means he's been better against lefties than righties, which makes sense because his best pitch is his splitter. His slider's barely used, and it kind of sucks. I'm going to be honest. It's not a great pitch. His slider, he's a two-pitch pitcher, and to me, that's scary and has blow-up potential to me. When you look at Gausman, two pitches, two good pitches, compared to Marcus Stroman, who has 4 or 5 good pitches. When he doesn't have his slider feel on any given day, can go sinker heavy, can go changeup heavy, can go to that cutter. He's got other pitches he can go to. If Gausman doesn't have his splitter, he's in trouble. And you sit fastball. If he doesn't have his fastball, you're sitting on the splitter. The splitter is such an elite pitch. There's no question about it. He uses it 35% of the time. And I think it's going to continue to be a really effective pitch for him. Just worries me more than a guy who has 4 or 5 pitches. And I would be concerned about giving $23 million a year for 6 years to Kevin Gausman. It would concern me more than giving that exact same contract to Marcus Stroman. But the reason I prefer Stroman to Gausman is because Stroman is going to cost less, I think. I think he's going to cost less. I think he's going to be closer to that 5 for 100. I think Gausman probably will get a 6th year and will be closer to 120 or 130. So I like Stroman better because I think he's more of a sure thing. And I think on this Twins staff, you could make the argument and be like, let's go for the higher upside with Gausman, who's been dominant before. Stroman hasn't exactly been dominant. He's just been really solid. They're very different in the way that they've had success. But maybe if you're the Twins, like you go after Gausman because he gives that opportunity of being an ace, or maybe you go after Stroman because he's a sure thing and provides stability to your rotation. Again, I don't think Gausman's going to be bad. I think Gausman's going to be really solid next year. I just think the expectation of him having a 2.80 ERA, if he gets paid for his overall line in 2021, I think that will be an overpay more so than what you're paying Marcus Stroman for what he's been, because I think there's more certainty for what he will be than there is with Kevin Gausman. I think the Giants will probably bring him back. They have a lot of money. Again, pitching at Oracle, I think, helps to suppress home runs. But this is a guy, like, you can look at it in a couple different ways. You can look at it as a breakout. You can look at it as sustainable, or you can look at it as they made some tweaks with him these last couple of years. He's really thrived, but you don't want to get carried away with the numbers and get carried away with how good he's been, because there's a chance that it's not sustainable. There's a chance that that's not who he is, and that, he's going to regress, and that he had a couple good years, one of them being a pandemic shortened season. But this is a pitcher who is recent as 2019, was in the bullpen at the end of the year and had an ERA over 5. Now, this FIP was 2 runs lower. He's always had more potential. He's a first-round pick. He was picked 4th overall. So a lot of things get baked into this. For me, being more risk-averse in who you invest in, I think Marcus Stroman, to me, is a safer bet long-term. I could be wrong about that. You could disagree. I could see the perspective of why they'd want to go for more upside with Kevin Gausman, but I'm going to go for the sure thing. I like Gausman. I think he's got really good stuff. I love that splitter. But on this contract, I'm not in love with it. And I think whoever signs Gausman could potentially overpay. And I have to be fair tomorrow, too. I have to be fair to Robbie Ray, because it's very similar in terms of track record. A little bit different, though. We'll talk about Ray tomorrow. I'm excited to get to him as we get through that middle tier. And then Steven Matz, we'll talk about Eduardo Rodriguez. Can't wait to get to all these guys. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe at YouTube. Subscribe at Apple Pods, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. Now make Locked On Bets your second listen, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. Thank you again for listening. Have a great day. Go Twins. Follow me on Twitter at NashWalker9. Follow the show at Locked On Twins. Let me know what you think.